Hello, you're watching Eastern Europe Review, the program that is mainly about Belarus, Ukraine and Russia. This is the common project of BELSAT TV and TVP World. My name is Dmitry Mitskevich, and let's take a look at what we've got for you today. Dictator Lukashenka acknowledged the attack of Belarusian partisans on the Russian AWACS aircraft.
We can see that the way this operation was implemented is something unimaginable. The most advanced technologies were used.
Georgia is engulfed in protests. The parliament tried to adopt an anti-democratic law that is already in force in Russia.
That's not what people want. People want to join the European Union, NATO, and our government is doing everything to make them reject us.
Will Ukraine be able to restore its dream, Mriya, the largest aircraft in the world, destroyed by the Russians during the occupation?
Only one copy was created. Any aircraft is built at a colossal labor cost. It is a large amount of work, and it is unfortunately not cheap.
The Lukashenka regime has finally acknowledged the fact of sabotage at the military airfield near Minsk. For more than a week, the authorities in Belarusian capital remained silent that the Russian A-50U aircraft, worth almost $500 million, had been damaged by drones in Belarus. The operation was carried out by Belarusian partisans, but in Lukashenka's version, both the Ukrainian secret services and the CIA were involved in it.
A unique military aircraft that carried out radio-electronic reconnaissance and helped the Russians hit the targets in Ukraine has been partially disabled at the military airfield Machulishchy near Minsk, Belarus. BIPOL, an organization which unites Belarusian security forces in exile, immediately announced that Belarusian partisans were behind the sabotage and published a video that proves how easy it was to get to the plane.
If sabotage by Belarusian partisans really took place in today's semi-totalitarian conditions in Belarus, this is the greatest achievement.
But according to Alexander Lukashenka, the saboteur arrived from Ukraine, and the operation against the Republic of Belarus was prepared by the Security Service of Ukraine and the Central Intelligence Agency. The so-called terrorist allegedly wanted to come to Belarus from Poland, but feared that he would attract attention with his Ukrainian passport. Therefore, he traveled across Latvia and Russia and arrived in Belarus using an internal Russian passport. But as a result of a seemingly brilliant operation by Lukashenka's special services, he was detained.
He was taken in the very first apartment, near Borovlyany, in some mansion of a leafy suburb. In the basement there is a printing office with various types of white rags and other literature.
Everything got mixed up here. The SSU, the CIA, and white flags, which are the symbol of opponents of the Lukashenka regime. Is this story credible? Lukashenka is known for his fantastic tales that are never confirmed by facts. BIPOL denies the version about the Ukrainian saboteur in Machulishchy, but the so-called terrorist who was detained admitted to being involved in the incident.
The security services can use such methods that a person confesses to whatever they want. We don't know who this person is, but why he confessed is clear. Lukashenka needs to show that he is all-powerful, that he can find the perpetrator.
The video of the suspected terrorist's arrest is being repeatedly broadcast by all the state television channels. But Alexander Azarovu believes that the video has been staged and the security forces featured in it are behaving too calmly to deal with the dangerous terrorist.
We can see that the way this operation was implemented is something unimaginable. The most advanced technologies were used. He was preparing for it for more than 1 month.
But civilian drones are not that difficult to convert to carry explosive devices. At least Ukrainians use it widely. Maybe this is what advanced technologies look like in the understanding of Lukashenka. According to him, at the same time, the A-50U has only scratches and one hole, which doesn't prevent it from performing combat functions.
With minimal damage to the radar or other equipment, the aircraft appears to look normal. The plane itself in such a case will fly, but its radar won't be able to perform its reconnaissance and targeting functions.
The plane case can be the beginning of a new wave of repressions. It has already been reported that Belarusians, up to 20 people, were detained together with the alleged Ukrainian agent.
The mustachioed dictator has completely lost his nerve. And this is not just springtime blues, it is the feeling of an imminent end. He has no good exits.
It is significant that Lukashenka didn't punish his top security forces for the oversight. On the contrary, he rewarded them for the allegedly successful operation to detain the so-called Ukrainian terrorist.
Large-scale opposition protests has been taking place in Georgia since Tuesday, the 7th of March. Residents were outraged that the country's parliament passed a bill on the so-called foreign agents during the first reading. Similar rules have existed in Russia for several years. Peaceful protests turned into a dispersal of demonstrators, arrests, and an unexpected decision by the ruling party to withdraw their bill. During the whole week, our correspondents have been reporting from the streets in Tbilisi.
March the 7th, hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside the Georgian parliament. Riots broke out in the streets of Tbilisi, which escalated into clashes with the police. It was caused by the fact that the deputies passed a bill on foreign agents after its first reading. People in the crowd say that it is a serious step towards stifling freedom in Georgia. In the evening, the demonstrators blocked the exits from the Parliament building. As a result, the deputies couldn't leave the building after the session. At night, the police and special forces began to disperse the peaceful protest. They used stun grenades, tear gas and water cannon. The protesters threw stones and Molotov cocktails in response. People began to build barricades. Georgian society absolutely deserves to know which organizations are being financed, from which source and what kind, and how that money is being spent. We are talking about accountability and transparency. There are no restrictions whatsoever placed on people by this law. Georgia is a country that is located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia in the western part of Transcaucasia. In the past, it was part of the Soviet Union. However, officially, Tbilisi does not even have diplomatic relations with modern Russia. 20% of Georgian territory is occupied. In August 2008, Vladimir Putin's troops invaded the country. After 5 days of fighting, the Kremlin recognized the independence of two Georgian territories, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. After that, Georgia severed diplomatic relations with Moscow. Tbilisi officially declared its decision to become part of the European Union and NATO. However, now, in 2023, the opposition inside the country accuses the current authorities of ties with Russia. When the ruling party Georgian Dream, which is headed by a billionaire and former Prime Minister Bidzina Ivanishvili, supported the draft of the law about foreign agents, it spurred the public debate regarding the relationship between the Georgian authorities and Moscow. That's not what people want. People want to join the European Union, NATO, and our government is doing everything to make them reject us. A similar bill was passed in Russia several years ago. Hundreds of Russian journalists, lawyers, civil activists, musicians, writers and politicians have already suffered because of this discriminatory law. Formally, the reason to be put on the register of foreign agents can be the receipt of any foreign funding, grant from any foreign fund, or it can even be a transfer of money from relatives. At the end of February, 2 similar bills were submitted to the Georgian parliament. The new rules oblige all legal entities and individuals receiving funding from abroad to register in a special register. Otherwise, those who infringe the law face hefty fines or imprisonment for up to 5 years.
We have been fighting for freedom and for our democracy for 30 years, and now they have decided to use our freedom in their own interest. We want a civilized world around us, not occupiers, not those people who only want war and don't want progress.
Protests continued into the following days. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in the center of Tbilisi and other cities. Every day, peaceful demonstrations ended in clashes with the police. Several dozen people were injured. Police arrested more than 133 people after 2 days of protests. At the same time, the demonstrators were supported by the Georgian president Salome Zurabishvili, who was making an official visit to the United States. She promised to veto the law. After 2 days of protests, Georgia's ruling party announced that it was withdrawing the bill on foreign agents. But opposition leaders didn't believe these claims because they are not legally binding. Officially, the parliamentary majority will have to vote against the document during the next meetings.
We do not believe in this political statement because we have very sad experience that Georgian Dream has lied Georgian publicity several times. So we need Georgian Dream to put that Russian law on the plenary session, parliament plenary session, and cancel it officially.
After 2 days of protests, Georgia's ruling party announced that it was withdrawing the bill on foreign agents. Already on the evening of Friday, March the 10th, the country's parliament voted against the law by a majority of votes. However, the opposition suspects that the ruling Georgian Dream Party will try to pass this document through the parliament again in an amended form.
During the occupation of the Kiev region, the Russian military destroyed the legendary An-225 Mriya aircraft. Mriya set about 300 world records in 30 years and visited hundreds of countries. Not only did the Russian army destroy a showpiece of Ukrainian industry, but also demolished the entire airfield complex. Our correspondents visited Gostomel a year after the occupation and tried to find an answer to the question, was it possible to save Mriya, and will the world see a new flagship cargo aircraft?
General Director of the Antonov State Enterprise, Yevhen Gavrilov, recalls how he entered the premises for the first time after the liberation of the airport at Gostomel.
I was devastated when we saw this. You know, I have met a lot of people, and I always thought we all are civilized. But here we washed tons of feces from all the planes. Here is the auxiliary power unit with kerosene, and here they started to burn it all. There was a brazier right here. They cooked food here. Everything was burned.
Dmitro Bulavchik became a commander a month before the attack. The pilot could not even think that he was piloting Mriya for the last time.
It is really painful, as if I lost a part of myself. Well, there's nothing to add here.
The flagship of Ukrainian aviation made its last flight on February the 5th, 2022, from Billund, Denmark. After that, Mriya was repaired in Gostomel. It needed the replacement of the sixth engine. In the evening of February the 23rd, Mriya was already technically ready. It needed only to obtain permission to fly the next day, which never happened.
The commander of the An-225 aircraft suggested trying to take off in a quiet way without permission, but considering the risks that the plane could be shot down, and we would not only lose the plane, but also the entire crew, we didn't accept this proposal.
The fact that the legendary An-225 aircraft could have been saved a month before the invasion was revealed by the aircraft's ex-commander Dmitry Antonov. On January the 26th, the NATO Support and Procurement Agency offered to relocate the entire fleet to Leipzig, but there was no response from the leadership.
No decision was made about the relocation because the top management of our company was absent. They had left for Leipzig 2 weeks before the war. So this is some food for thought. Their connections with the Russian Federation and so on.
After this statement, Ukroboronprom, which includes the Antonov State Enterprise, carried out an internal audit and dismissed the general director of the enterprise, Serhiy Bychkov, but this was not followed by any official statements. Meanwhile, the focus of the new top management is on creating a new Mriya. It is still kept secret exactly what it is going to be like. The only thing that is known is that the aircraft will weigh 10 tons less, which will enable it to take more cargo and accordingly fly for longer.
These samples are not produced on a large scale. This is not mass production. Hundreds of enterprises worked on it, so it is unique. Only one copy was created. Any aircraft is built at a colossal labor cost. It is a large amount of work, and it is unfortunately not cheap.
Yevgeny Gavrilov estimated the cost of restoring the largest aircraft in the world at 500 million euros. The department is still thinking about how to reduce the costs as much as possible. Microsoft was the first to volunteer to help. The developers added Mriya to Microsoft Flight Simulator and presented the update on February the 27th, which was the anniversary of its destruction. All proceeds will be used to build a new flagship cargo aircraft.
That's all for today. Eastern Europe Review will be back next Sunday. Please stay with TVP World and support Ukraine.